Welcome to our session titled Power Media Performance in the Age of Privacy, where we'll explore new frontiers in performance measurement. My name is Dan Slivjanovski. I'm the CMO of DoubleVerify. DoubleVerify powers media quality and performance for the world's largest brands, marketplaces, and publishers. For today's session, I'm joined by Joris, DV's SVP of Global Account Management, who will showcase some of our solutions in action. Now, during today's session, we're going to tackle the issue of driving performance amid some pretty key industry disruptions. And we're going to answer key questions such as, what role does quality play in driving performance? How do brands ensure that they can reach audiences who are going to be receptive to their product and messaging without relying on traditional third-party audience data? What's with this resurgence in contextual targeting? And is today's contextual different from what it was 10 years ago? What privacy-friendly user attention signals do we have that might be more likely to drive performance? And what's moving and shaking in terms of exciting innovation? And finally, we'll make time for Q&A. Ultimately, we want you to leave this session with some fresh strategic ideas about how to drive performance, what metrics matter, how we can comply with privacy demands, and what the future of targeting and measurement looks like. Now, before we take a deep dive into performance, I think it's important to take a step back and address what makes for a successful ad campaign. While specific KPIs may differ by brand and by campaign, I think we can all agree that meeting these KPIs is what constitutes success, whether we're looking to increase brand awareness, generate leads, or focus on conversions. At the end of the day, it's about driving outcomes. However, before we can even start thinking about specific performance KPIs, we have to have a foundation of quality. And quality, I would argue, is that prerequisite to performance. It's the combination of quality and performance indicators that really drive success. So first, let's define quality. In our world, a foundation of quality includes 4 key elements. First is fraud, i.e., is my ad served to a real human being? Second, viewability. Did my ad have the opportunity to be seen and make an impact? Third is brand safety and suitability. Was my ad served against content that's aligned with my brand's equity and values? Or can it possibly hurt my reputation with consumers? And finally, geo. Was my ad served in the intended geography? Now, while all this seems pretty straightforward, you'd all be surprised at how many advertisers see these as siloed metrics as opposed to holistically. And against that statement, that's why we developed DV Authentic Ads. The Authentic Ad is a proprietary MRC accredited metric that verifies that ads are collectively fully viewed by a real person in a brand safe environment and within the intended geography. And authentic ads are a vital starting point. They qualify ad opportunities in terms of their potential to perform and drive a business outcome. So on top of the authentic ad, how do we measure performance amid a shifting industry landscape and leverage privacy-friendly data signals along the way? Well, until recently, many advertisers looked to third-party audience data to create a digital profile that let them do precise targeting and measurement across their ad campaigns. But this landscape is fast changing. Data shows that the vast majority of consumers are increasingly concerned about their privacy and how their data can be used. Moreover, stringent data privacy regulations like GDPR and CCPA and the decision by most web browsers to sunset the use of third-party cookies are ushering a universal shift away from third-party audience targeting. And these challenges are already starting to make waves in the industry. We're seeing brands like Google, Oracle, and Facebook, and others making headlines on the topic and speaking about the potential commercial impact of all of this change and disruption. So against this backdrop, alternative ways of leveraging data to inform performance are critical. However, current performance measurement solutions have their limitations, And those solutions fall into two camps. One option is precise, but not privacy friendly. And this is the realm of third-party cookie targeting, dynamic creative optimization, and multi-touch attribution. Another option is privacy friendly, but it's not immediate. And this includes techniques like media mix models, panel studies, and post-campaign research instruments. So that's a conundrum. What's a brand to do? For DV, product innovation around solutions that are privacy safe on the one hand and offer precise forms of measurement and optimization on the other has been a top priority for the company when it comes to our innovation pipeline. Our performance suite includes two core offerings today: Custom Contextual, which leverages a deep understanding of content and context to enable interest or intent-based user targeting, and DV Authentic Attention, which leverages new data sets correlated with achieving measurable campaign KPIs. So let's start with contextual targeting and discuss why it's getting so much attention all of a sudden. Well, in the post-cookie world, context is back. It's privacy safe and it works. Our recent research overwhelmingly shows that users are receptive to ads that are relevant to the content they're viewing, with a significant percentage stating that they've actually tried a new brand product as a result of seeing a contextually relevant promotion. But this isn't your grandfather's contextual targeting. The landscape has grown immeasurably more sophisticated. We're employing semantic science and ontological expertise to accurately classify content and understand its true meaning. Facets of contextual targeting have expanded to include a whole array of IAB categories, as well as behavioral, seasonal, and even custom categories that a brand can designate. Segments can be tailored to include site, app, and language inclusions and exclusions, as well as specific URL keyword lists. And as with all of our data solutions, contextual settings and insights are housed within DV Pinnacle, which is our unified service and analytics platform, where a single contextual targeting profile can be syndicated to a brand's multiple DSPs. So with contextual, the old adage rings true. Things move in cycles, and what's old is new again, but it's really different this time around. Next, let's talk a little bit about attention and the new school of privacy-friendly data that falls within that framework. We have a solution called DV Authentic Attention that offers actionable insights into what truly drives campaign effectiveness for global brands. It builds on our core assets, so it builds on DV's Authentic Ad, which again, if you didn't pay attention, describes all those impressions that are collectively viewable, fraud-free, brand-safe, and in geo, and it further leverages over 50 data points to provide deep impression-level insight that's actionable across marketing goals. And it does it all using a privacy-safe methodology. The data for Authentic Attention falls within two cohorts, and we call these exposure and engagement. So more specifically, the sum of Authentic Attention goes beyond traditional viewability, which has always been the classic proxy for efficiency. We're reporting real-time data in the form of actionable indices. The exposure index is a measure of ad presentation, and exposure takes into account things like time in view of my ad, the ad share of screen, video quartile performance, and more. The engagement index, on the other hand, is a measure of user interaction. This is proof that the user was actually there during ad exposure. And engagement gauges numerous user interactions at the device and at the ad level, such as ad, device, and browser touch events, scroll events, video playback, even device orientation changes, and much more. And this is a paradigm shift for verification. We are building on quality measurement and evolving into predictive performance intelligence that just so happens to be privacy friendly to boot. And with that, I'm going to turn over to my colleague Joris, who will bring DV Authentic Attention to life and demonstrate some key real-life optimization use cases. Take it away, Joris.
Thanks, Dan. So as Dan said, we're talking about authentic attention. How do you build on the authentic viewable ad? And over the last 6 months, we've seen several of our clients in pre-release environments utilizing this data in order to optimize both their conversion and brand-based campaigns. So I want to dive in first into what entails the exposure and engagement measures that we utilize within Authentic Attention. And then I want to dive a little bit deeper into some of the common use cases that our clients have been utilizing this data for and talk about some of the results that they have seen. Exposure is the first bucket. When we look beyond viewability, we will utilize data points such as viewable time, video presentation, ad share of screen, all information that flows into a singular holistic exposure index so that you can look at one index within our system in order to understand how well is my campaign performing on an exposure basis. So when we dive deeper, we can see that we have a banner unit on the next slide, which takes up a lot of real estate. It is in view on average for about 36 seconds. And as we move down the screen, we find another unit that has less real estate and is only in view for about 23 seconds. We utilize these metrics to create what we call the display intensity metric, which we show to our clients to indicate what performs for a longer time of exposure versus another. Now, when we move on from display and we take a look at video, we have even more data points that we can utilize to create this singular video intensity metric. We look at timing completion, quartile completion, was the ad in view, was the ad shown fully on screen, and was the sound on? Now we show this data, as you can see at the graph at the bottom, by quartile, and the deep purple bar that you see here creates a singular metric again, which is video intensity, so that you can see quartile over quartile, how is the exposure of my video unit evolving. And finally, when we move beyond these exposure measures, we can see that we also take into account share of screen. It's something that a lot of our clients have been talking about, and the prominence will be very different. For the same unit, in this case, the 300 by 250, will vary from a mobile device to a desktop device. On the mobile device, the prominence is 3 times higher. Therefore, increasing again that exposure index that we show you and increasing the overall authentic attention rate. Now, moving on from exposure to engagement, one of the key things that we discussed with our clients is when you look at exposure, it's a good starting point. It allows you to see whether or not your ad had the ability to be seen by a user. But if a user wasn't present, a user didn't have the opportunity to engage with your ad. So for us, it was crucial to also layer over engagement metrics instead of looking at those singular exposure metrics. And the first thing that we do with engagement is we try to establish whether or not a user was present. Secondarily, we will track whether or not a user was engaging with your ads. And as you can see, there are a lot of data points that we utilize for this. Whether it's clicking, scrolling, hovering, it could be changing the orientation to watch an ad in a different size. And people could even change the volume up or down depending on how they want to interact with the ads. Exposure is a starting point, but engagement goes so much farther. And then together we build that into a singular authentic attention index. So let's talk about some of these use cases that we have seen. So from the early access with our clients, we have established 2 main goals that we have been able to achieve with our clients. The first one is real-time campaign optimization. DoubleVerify is tracking this data in a real-time environment when the impressions are being served. And in near real time, you will see it in our reporting, and you can slice and dice that information by pub, by partner, by placement, by creative, by device type, any way that you want, in order to understand what are the areas where you want to focus on. And we've seen that our clients who had both conversion-based and brand lift campaigns have been able to achieve their goals in a better way by optimizing towards authentic attention. In some use cases, the conversion went up with 30%, awareness and brand lift went up with 4 to 10%, showing that clearly they were able to achieve their KPIs better with our system. On top of that, we have been able to utilize this data for post-campaign decision-making. And one of the examples I'm going to dig into the end is how to utilize this data for creative optimization. So first of all, this is what the system looks like when you look at your campaign reporting. On the y-axis, we give you a singular engagement index. Instead of looking at the data points in silo, we give you one index that you can look at. The exposure measurement is on the x-axis and shows you all those exposure measurement data points in one singular index. And then at the top, we compile it together with an attention index, exposure index, and engagement index. Now, what is important here is that our baseline is 100. And 100 is the average of what we see in the industry, meaning if you score above, you are scoring above market average. In this case, you can see exposure is below 100, meaning you probably have an opportunity to identify optimization criteria that you can apply to your campaigns when your campaigns are live. I want to dive into one of the most common use cases that we have seen by looking at one specific campaign and see how it was performing. The campaign that is shown here, the size of the bubble represents the amount of impressions that go there. The bigger the bubble, the more impressions and probably the more spend you are allocating to this campaign. The campaign performed well in terms of engagement, but in terms of exposure, we have some opportunities. And we want to dive a little bit deeper, in this case by domain, in order to understand what are those areas of improvement that we can identify. And immediately you can see each domain works differently than another. The engagement and exposure varies. Now remember, this is all based on authentic viewable impressions. So these impressions are reaching the base criteria. But on top of that, we have a couple of domains that perform well in terms of engagement. And then when we look deeper, we have the upper quadrant, which performs well in terms of both engagement and exposure. This is where our clients who have optimized towards this quadrant have seen improvements in terms of both conversion and brand lift campaigns. An immediate opportunity that our clients have applied was to take these domains. You can see there's not a lot of spend going there, but increase spend into these areas. And it has immediately improved the KPI achievement of their campaigns. When we dive a little bit further, we've also taken our clients to how they can evaluate domain performance. And one of the things that was interesting was that certain domains got a high volume of impressions because they had a high viewability rate. But when you layer on authentic attention, you can see that certain domains do not necessarily equate high performance just because they give you viewable impressions. In certain of these cases, we had to go beyond that and maybe improve instead towards high engagement, high exposure sites. The next example that I want to show you is how to utilize this data for creative optimization. Let's take the same campaign and we break it down by placement. We're identifying here a video placement that is getting a high volume of budget in terms of this campaign. When we dive into the campaign and we look by creative, how each creative has been performing, we can see that there was one creative that performed really well in terms of both engagement and exposure. Another campaign was slightly underperforming. Now we want to identify exactly what the differences are between those two campaigns. So diving into the third creative, we can see that it starts off very high. The completion rate of the video is at 91%. The viewability rate is at 96%. But when you look at the completion of the video in Q4, we have lost a significant amount of users. And when you look beyond completion, you look at the viewability, 50 percentage points drop overall in the viewability rate from Q1 to Q4. Clearly showing that while the ad was still playing for a lot of the users, most users no longer were able to see this ad playing. On top of that, when you look at the audibility, it started off low and it's remained low throughout the duration of the video. When we dive deeper into the creative that had higher performance, we were able to identify some key differentiators. First of all, the completion rate was over 10 percentage points higher than the previous creative. Secondarily, the viewability rate was over 30 percentage points higher at the end of the video than it was versus the previous creative, showcasing that the users remained attentive or at least exposed to the ad that was playing. And again, this was the same ad, the same placement, just a different creative that was shown. And lastly, when we look at the audibility, it started off higher and it remained consistently high throughout the duration of the video. Lastly, we can see that the video intensity, which is that deep verbal bar that singular metric that we offer you remained consistently high throughout the video, even went up slightly from the second to the third quartile, clearly outperforming the other creative. So when you think about creative optimization, we're going into a world where creative testing, A/B testing, the way that you are doing it today will be more complicated. In a cookieless world, it will not be possible to do it in the same way. So how can you still identify key performance criteria for your creatives that you can provide back to your creative agencies and together identify those attributes that you need to build into creative builds? Utilize media strategy data in order to drive future creative builds is one of the key goals that our clients have been able to achieve with the data that is being shown here. So as we go on to the next slide, I want to summarize the different items that Authentic Attention has been able to drive for our early access clients. It hasn't just been about identifying those areas where you want to send your ads to. That was a first initiative, and it was very interesting to see how that helped drive their key performance indicators. But on top of that, being able to change creative builds, allowing a new way to test creative functionality and attributes that drive success in the future has been one of the key takeaways from the tests that we have done. On top of that, as you are more and more going into a privacy regulated environment, how can you identify those devices where you are performing best? And how can you utilize more advanced data in order to drive the deals that you want to establish with your partners where you are going to allocate your budget? And then finally, Dan talked about this in the beginning of the presentation. We are developing content insights. As content adjacency becomes more important, and as you are working in a cookieless, privacy regulated world, how do you get exposure and engagement related data? How can you target environments that are related to the content that you are driving will help you achieve your KPIs quicker and faster. So far, Authentic Attention has been a great addition next to the brand safety, the fraud, and the viewability tracking that we have done, have allowed our clients to prepare themselves for this next world that is coming with more advanced data that's available in near real time and can help them drive decisions to help them drive their KPIs forward. So with that, we've come to the end of our presentation, and I believe we still have some time left, so we can open it up for some Q&A.
Sure. So one question came in: does Authentic Attention provide value for branding and DR campaigns? So we brought the solution to market carefully, and we had an early access program with key customers where we could work in a much closer fashion with them and really explore the offering. And what we found was that Authentic Attention indices were positively correlated for both branding events as well as conversions. And on the branding front, we did a study that was validated by a third-party research house, Kantar, that showed good correlation with brand lift, brand favorability, purchase intent, and more. And on the conversion side, actually driving on-site conversions. And so it had application for both of those KPIs. I'll keep going. There's another question: of all the metrics you measure, are there some you consider more important than others? You know, our answer is that we feel it's valuable to look at these metrics holistically, and that's why we designed Authentic Attention to really be a tree of indices, where there is a master Authentic Attention index that is the sum, or it's composed of the exposure and engagement indices, and then the variables within each of those cohorts is also explorable. You can drill down and actually see the intricate or the more detailed drivers or variables of those two indices for their effect and their correlation. So there is really as much or as high level or as granular information as the brand would want to explore. Next question: is this a solution that is currently live? Yes, the solution is live, and we're preparing for GA very soon. But if you would like to find out more, please reach out to the company through the corporate website, and we'd be happy to set up a demo. Question: is this data available programmatically? I think that means for targeting purposes, I would answer that this is absolutely something that's on our roadmap, and more news on that will come soon.
I don't see any new questions coming in, but of course, we're always available to help answer any questions. You can reach out to us. We have a lot of conversations with our clients on this topic because I think for everybody it's very top of mind with the way that the industry is going in. Privacy regulations are key, they are important. The performance of your campaigns is as well. And this is a solution that allows still to get advanced insight next to the protection that you already get. It's really for us an opportunity to go beyond verification. We've always focused very highly on brand safety and fraud, which is the protection that everybody needs in this day and age. But going beyond that and providing these key exposure and engagement metrics, and especially those holistic indices so that you don't need to look at singular data points, has been really well received by our clients. And I think the next step in the evolution of verification. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions offline that come in. Thanks for attending the session, and we hope that everybody is enjoying the rest of CES.